Welcome, viewers, back to the Preaching Humanist with David Oliverio. That is I. Today I have with me Dan from rural Texas. And we're going to do a nice little interview today with Dan. Before I turn it over to him and start asking questions, Dan went out with me today. We did some atheist activism. Some of you have heard my episodes on Ask an Atheist. So we were up in Georgetown, Texas.
That's right.
And I like to always say God's country, the very rural, small town, suburban part of North Austin. And we had some fun this morning. But Dan's got a really interesting story. I met Dan, a few months ago at Oasis here in Austin. And Anthony, I can never pronounce his last name.
Magnabosco.
And he's a fellow Italian, and I can't even pronounce his last name. How embarrassing is that? When Anthony was here speaking at Oasis, and I would like to say that Daniel is the fruit of, like we used to say in our Christian circles when I was an evangelist, Dan is a fruit of Anthony's ministry. So we don't say that.
It's like the worst way you could possibly
Absolutely.
say that.
So little satire here. So anyway, I really appreciate you coming down to Austin and helping out today. So we're just going to sit back and talk. So Dan is from a very religious background. So I want to ask Dan a few questions. And those of you that are viewing that are on the fringe of Christianity, you may be younger like Dan. Dan's a millennial.
That's true.
I'm not. That's all I'm going to say. And if you're on the fringe of Christianity, you're having doubts, or if you've just recently come out believing in the supernatural, I'm hoping that Dan's testimony and story will help some of you to come out and help you to go through this rational process of using reason and the scientific method to help you distinguish between a truth from a falsity. So Dan, I want you to just go over basically your upbringing. So tell us about your upbringing and so forth.
Sure. Well, I spent the first 12 years of my life in a Methodist church, and then my teenage years up until college in a Baptist church. My family switched churches around that time because we were in a Boy Scout troop at the time, and it was one at the Baptist church, and we liked the community over there, so we kind of switched over. So I kind of had a little bit of both of that theology growing up. I didn't really know a lot of the difference until I got older, but there was a noticeably different culture there. Methodists tend to be a little more liberal in their Christianity, and the Baptists are kind of the opposite. So that was kind of an interesting culture shock, and probably one of the first signs of me thinking that there is something weird about all this, that there's not a congruency. But I grew up in a very religious family. Both my parents are Christians. I had a brother that's Christian as well. And we just believed, and it wasn't a big deal. Like, we didn't really talk about it a whole lot at home, I guess, but it did affect the way that I did things. I was in the youth group. I was very devout in that. I did mission trips with them and stuff. Of course, where I grew up, pretty much everyone else was a Christian, so there wasn't really a reason for me to question things, except when I was in middle school, I remember having this one friend come out to me as an atheist, and that was my first experience with atheism. I didn't know what it was. Like, I didn't know that not believing in God really was like an option. I thought it was just like you could rebel from God, but like the idea of there not even being one was still kind of a fresh concept to me. And I just remember him explaining to me, and like, it's so sad because he was obviously being very vulnerable to me, and like, this wasn't an easy thing for him, but I just remember judging him and thinking, wow, this is what happens when you don't believe in God. You're wrecked right now, and you're sad about this, and that's why you're telling me about this. But really, he was just being honest with me about what he thought, and I was putting those judgments on them. And looking back on that now as an atheist, I say, wow, that's really sad that I did that to him, and I completely understand his struggle, but it didn't really faze me. I still kept going, but that was kind of my conception of atheism now. It was, oh, wow, this person who I knew became an atheist, and now I need to make sure that that doesn't happen to other people. And so I ended up becoming more devout. So we fast forward to college. Okay. I'm taking a bunch of different classes in anthropology and whatnot, things kind of challenging my worldview. And I'm involved with the college ministry there, and eventually I become a section leader in that college ministry. So I'm kind of doing my own preaching to other college kids, telling them what's up. I was involved in camp ministries during the summer, so I spent time teaching to kids and children about the Bible, so I was really into it. And then one day, there's a man that comes up to me and asks me about my beliefs. That was Anthony Magdabosco. And my experience with that is actually still on his channel. That was 2 years ago. And he asked me a lot of questions about my beliefs. And I didn't have a lot of good responses to it. I gave responses in the video. They're not great. And I've wondered why this was so hard for me. I've literally been doing this my whole life. Why am I just now struggling with this? It was because he was asking me things that I never really put the time and thought into. And so after that conversation, I started to research and investigate on my own, and I had doubts about doubts, right? So I had doubts about atheism. I was like, okay, where do you get your moral framework, and how do you get a universe from nothing? But suddenly my doubts about Christianity was becoming a much bigger list. How do we know that the Bible is true? How do we trust that, that any of this is real? How do we know that this isn't just subjective experiences? And so I eventually fell into like this Christian mysticism almost. I was kind of like, well, I don't know if anything's true or not, but I choose to believe it because it made me feel good, because I was getting something out of it. And there was a lot of community and a lot of great friendships to be had, but I realized that the more and more I leaned in liberal Christianity, the slippier the slope got when you had to ask me things about the infallibility of the Bible or the historical accuracy of it, and among other things. And so eventually I remember reading, and I can't remember the passage now. I want to say it's 2 Corinthians. I don't think it is, but it's the passage.
2 Corinthians, like Trump said. 2 Corinthians.
Right, 2 Corinthians, right? It was the passage that said that women shouldn't be up in the church speaking. They should be silent and submissive to their husbands. And I just remember reading it at that moment. And I've read some crazy stuff in the Bible, but just reading that and thinking, wow, okay, the God of the universe, who created half the population to be female, has decided that he wants his creation to be silent and needs to be submissive and dominant towards a man who may or may not be good to them, who may or may not have their best intentions in mind, and that's supposed to be holy, and that's supposed to be good. And it was like that moment where I was like, I cannot believe this anymore. And there's tons and tons of other things that I looked at too. I think one that surprised me was just the statistics of Christianity. How many people are Christian and how many people are Muslim? If I remember right, it's about 2 billion people that are Christian right now. We've got about 1.6 billion Muslims, like 1.2 billion Hindus, I think.
Yeah, I think percentage-wise, it's 33% Christian, 24 to 25% Muslim.
Yeah, and when you look at the Bible and you see a God that, if you so much as sneeze wrong, gets mad at you and is somehow okay with all these different belief systems going on right now and is supposedly doing nothing about it. I mean, I haven't seen any, fire raining down from the sky or anything yet. I have to wonder, what's the deal? Why would this be? Is a better explanation of this that maybe my belief system is just as made up as anybody else's? I think so, and that's kind of the conclusion that I came to. So here I am now, slowly trying to come out, slowly helping out with Anthony Magdabosco. We got a podcast going on now, a Street Epistemology podcast. We don't have a name for it yet, but we're working on it, and just doing our thing and trying to help other people with their beliefs too, trying to help them find truth and be better people. So,
beautiful. Yeah. So what would you say to someone like the lady we talked to today when we went out and did our activism, who would be right at that area of their life or time in their life, they're having doubts, they're in the church, they were raised in Christianity or Islam, any other religion, but they were afraid to come out. What would you say to people that were right there, not wanting to leave church and having many, many doubts about what they've been told to be true?
Yeah, so I've been there, and I've been an atheist at church. I've done that for a while now, and I still hang out with a lot of people from my church. it's not easy because you already have a set established community that ostensibly shares the same values that you do, and that you've known for a long time, and that hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is your beliefs. You know, so what do? I think the best thing you can do is to just. It's hard, but you have to be yourself. You know, you got to be honest with who you are, because you're going to be upset about it either way. It's going to bring division. I think the better thing is to be honest and open with yourself and find people who don't care or who want to love you through whatever you're going through than people who are just going to judge you, because you don't really need that in your life. It's not helpful for anybody. And you can help change other people's minds too, if not right away. I know that I haven't kept in contact with my friend in years, but I wish I could tell him, hey, thank you for being a part of my process, because you helped send those seeds of doubt, and I can't thank you for that anymore. So you don't know what you're doing right now that's going to affect people years from now. I didn't get in contact with Anthony until 2 years afterwards, you know, and he had no idea about the transition in my process. So, yeah, you just gotta be you. That's the only advice I can give.
And what would you say to viewers that are possibly in Christianity, and they also have a fear of, like the lady told us today? I asked her, would your morality collapse if God being the grounds for your morality were absent? And she said, oh my goodness, I would probably kill myself, right? And she admitted she wouldn't have any morality without God. What would you tell people that were still in this belief system who would say, well, you know what, I can't let this go because I will fall into immorality or immoral behavior, I will lose my ethics and so forth?
Man, that's weird for me, because I found in my process I did the opposite. I think I became a better person because the more I studied on the subject, the more I got into philosophy and ethics, and I realized that Christianity as an ethics system just isn't very good, at least some of the values that it holds. The one that I always bring up is the treatment of homosexuals, for example. I see no reason why, if one man loves another man, there should be any division between that. Just because it makes you feel gross, or they don't feel gross about it. And I believe that they have an inherent right to marriage just like anybody else. But the Bible isn't going to tell you that, and other Christians, for the most part, aren't going to tell you that either. And you can go back to the treatment of women. You can go back to the treatment of a lot of different people groups over the years, actually, and see how much Christianity has affected that. See how much that philosophy has changed people's minds, I think, for the worse in a lot of cases. Yes, there are great ethical philosophers who were Christian, but it's always against what the mainstream is. They're always starting something new because the culture that they're a part of is usually what's holding them back.
Very good. I know some of my viewers that are having doubts and they're skeptical about their belief system of Christianity and so forth, would also say, well, if I leave church, or if I become a secular humanist atheist, or if I let go of belief in God, I'll lose my friends and my family and so forth.
Yeah.
Talk about that and maybe your own personal experience.
Yeah, you will. There's no way around that. You're not going to keep everybody. That's for certain. You have to be okay with that.
But go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, it goes back to being honest with yourself and choosing to surround yourself with people who are going to help you and help you grow as a person, rather than people who are going to keep you down. Unfortunately, for some people, that's too much to handle, and their own belief system tells them that they can't hang out with you, and they're going to have to make that choice, whether they still want to follow that, and that's going to challenge them. And I think as long as you're challenging people, that's a good thing, because people often don't think about these things until it personally affects them in some way or another. And there's groups like Oasis out there and other people who are totally willing to help you out with whatever's going on. You know, it's not going to be quite the same, but you might find that it's better. So,
yeah, that's what we were discussing earlier. when we were eating earlier for lunch that there are many secular organizations, and of course my viewers probably already viewed my last few episodes about building a secular society and community. So we're out there. I mean, back in my day 30 years ago when I went through what you did, we didn't have a secular community. Now, if you're frightened about leaving the church and you're afraid you're going to lose friends and all that, we do have secular organizations now, just like church, but without the belief in the supernatural. So I think that's very, very important. Anything else you want to add to your background, or you could help some of my viewers, those that are at that place in their life where they're not sure, they're at that Y in the road and they have to make a choice?
Sure. Well, I always think a good way to start, and the one I always start with people, is just don't analyze what an atheist might believe or not believe versus what a Christian might not believe. Go with something else. Go with what a Hindu or a Muslim, okay? Why don't you believe in the Quran, for example? You may say, well, I've never read it or anything. And I don't think you have to read it to believe something's not true. You can look at something's origins. You can see, well, what evaluative methods would I use to distinguish this from being true, from being false? And you look at the claims and the nature of those claims and see if those are real. And then you can apply that to the Bible. You can apply that to claims about Christianity and see, is one of these more true than the other? Can you demonstrate that? And if you can't, why can't you? You know, really it's a breakdown of what you believe versus what other people believe. I think that's a strong start because, you know, how can you know for sure unless you really look at it, you know? It's going to be true whether or not you believe it's true, right? I think the truth is out there. I think it can be discovered, and I think we do have means of discovering it. Some people disagree with all of those assumptions, but that's how I view things.
Beautiful, beautiful. So most of my viewers know my take on unity in the community, supporting each other, even if we have slight nuance. We have different ways of doing things as far as activists and so forth. But why don't you let my viewers know how they can watch this podcast that you're on and give a shout out for?
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know, street epistemology is a modified Socratic method, is what I like to say. It's basically a way of talking to people about their belief systems, and it doesn't have to be religious beliefs either. It can be pretty much whatever you want, and just asking them how they know what they know is true, what methods did they use to come to those conclusions, and things like that. It was used on me by a guy named Anthony Magdabosco, who has a great YouTube channel, and he and I and some other people are running a podcast right now, which you can find through his channel as well. And we now have a separate channel for it on the Street Epistemology YouTube channel. And basically, we're just talking about better ways to improve street epistemology, kind of what it's about, some of the ethics behind it. And we're doing a new thing now where we are taking other people's street epistemology videos, and we're kind of breaking it down, seeing what works, what doesn't work, what we kind of think about the video. And, it's a great method. I personally use it. It worked on me. I think it can work on other people too, and I hope more people can try it. So,
beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I'm a happy man when I see activists out there doing whatever style fits them, as long as they're kind and compassionate to the people. So this is one method, and it's a very good method, this street epistemology. So, all right, man, I think we did good. You did great. Thank you so much, Dan,
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah.
And hopefully you'll join me again when we do some more of this Ask an Atheist out there in rural communities, putting a face on that which is being demonized. And visibility and awareness are the keys to acceptance in our very, very Christian, religious, conservative country here in America. So, thank you for watching the Preaching Humanist. Have a wonderful day.